Hi Naptime friends, it's Tish with Naptime Creations. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing some acrylic painting on a huge river rock, and we're going to be giving it a resin top coat to make it nice and shiny. The colors I'm going to be using today are Liquitex Basics Phalo Blue, Artisan Flow Acrylic in black, neon pink, and white. I'm also going to be using some Jaquard Americana Blue Harbor, and it doesn't have to be, this exact color, just any light blue. It's kind of like a mid-tone blue would work. And then Delta, this is just a craft paint, yellow, that's just what it's called, straight up yellow. And then Jaquard Americana Coral Shell, a nice coral color. So what I'm going to do is take my foam brush here on my river rock, and I'm envisioning this rock cut into 6 pieces. So basically what we're going to be doing is a kind of like a water landscape piece. So it's going to be reflections. So there's going to be a reflection of what's on top. Same thing's going to be on the bottom. And it'll help you to, if you want to, you could take a little ruler like I have here off to the side and draw a line, right in the middle of the rock. And that'll kind of help you envision your horizon line. And this is going to make sense why I'm doing the pink in these areas in just a second. So just envision, like, if it's cut in half, the middle section of the top and the middle section of the bottom. Paint those pink, and then you're going to go in with your yellow and your coral. Just kind of blend it a little bit on your little paper that you're working over. I'm working over wax paper, and paint the middle. And it's okay if there's still pink on your foam brush. That actually gives you a nice kind of gradient and gives you some nice blending of your colors. So just keep dipping in and then getting that center section. So see, if you imagine that yellow peachy section cut in half, it's going to be the same thing on top and the same thing on the bottom. And then those white sections, we're going to be painting the light blue color and doing some kind of highlights with the phalo blue. So I painted this river rock white. That's not a necessary step. I mean, I just like to have it kind of be bright underneath, but you could totally just use the rock that you have. This rock too, it's not totally flat. Like river rocks are pretty flat. This one kind of had some texture, so you'll see when I start painting the trees and stuff, it can be a little bit difficult, but it's still totally doable. I love painting these big river rocks. They're kind of like garden stones. And then see, I just went in with the light blue and painted the top and the bottom, making the water and the sky. And then just go in, kind of blend a little bit of the yellow and the peach in with your water. Just kind of blend, blend, blend. And I wasn't, painting. I was kind of pouncing my brush. See, it's kind of like pounce, 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 pounce. And that's really going to help that paint stay on the rock. And if your rock isn't perfectly flat or perfectly smooth, sometimes, the paint is kind of hard to make it stay put. So pouncing really helps make that paint stay put if you're dealing with a rock that's not smooth or flat. So then I was just taking my finger. Don't be afraid to go in with your finger and just kind of blend those colors, make them nice and blended. I was adding a little bit more of the peach and the neon pink, kind of give it a nice sunset vibe. And be sure to get the sides or the kind of edges of your rock too. You want to make sure that those are nice and covered. So then that way everything's looks all nice and finished, and it'll be beautiful once we give it a resin top coat. So here I'm going in with my pink, just highlighting that kind of sky area and also in the water too, just taking my finger and going in. Sometimes our fingers are our best instruments. They work better than a paintbrush sometimes. Don't be afraid to get in there and use your fingers. And as you can see, I'm wearing my robe. If you or if you know me personally, if anybody's watching this video, you know that I love to wear robes. Even if I have like full clothing on, I still wear a robe. I'm always cold. So if I'm not doing like acrylic pouring or resin, especially resin art, then you'll catch me in a robe in my house. Unless it's, summertime, then no robes. So here I'm going in with my number 8 brush. It's a little flat brush. I'm dipping into some of that phalo blue, and I'm going to kind of highlight or darken up the water and the skyline. The phalo blue is very, very pigmented. You only need a tiny bit of it. It's a very, very dark color. It's almost black, but it's not black. It's a really nice paint. But you can see I made just like a dime amount, and that was even too much for what I was doing here. Probably only needed like the size of a pea. So then I'm just going to flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, just go in with my flat brush, do a little bit of, I guess you could call it sighlighting or kind of shading. And then I'm looking at it, trying to figure out which way is going to be the sky and which side's going to be the bottom, the water. So now I'm going to go in with a piece of cardboard. I was going to use my ruler, but it's plastic and kind of flimsy, so I thought, oh, this piece of cardboard will work. It's nice and flat. So I figured out which way was going to be my sky and which way was going to be my water, and now I'm going to go in and draw my horizon line, and now I'm going to draw in my land. And when you draw in your land, you don't want to go too far down or too far up into the sky. Maybe a little bit less than halfway up is good. And so you draw just basically like a little mountain, and then same thing on the bottom, because it's a reflection, so it's going to be the same thing in the water as it is in the sky or land area. Now I'm going to go in with my number 12 flat brush, dip into my black, kind of paint it on your wax paper or whatever, newspaper, whatever you're working over. Make sure there's enough paint on your brush, and then fill in the land. And you're going to want to leave a little bit of a gap, you'll see here in a second, between the land and the reflection, and that's going to help you when you do your horizon. So see, you want to leave just like a little bit of a line when you paint in your reflection, just because you're going to paint in a horizon line later after you get everything all finished, and that's going to kind of be a nice guide for you. So you just want to leave that little slice open. You don't want to paint that part black, but then paint the rest of it black. You can't really see this on camera, but I wanted this part of the water to be a little bit more bright, so I went in with some of that peach and just kind of filled in that section right there. It was looking kind of dull and muddy, I guess you could say. So I just kind of filled that in with my peach, and then I'm going to take my finger and kind of blend it to make some nice shading, and that really brightened it up. One thing that I really like about acrylic paint is it dries really fast, so you can do lots of layers, and if it's not drying fast enough, you can always go in with your heat gun or a hair dryer like this and dry it manually, and it dries pretty quickly, which is nice. Then you can add your next step. So now I'm going to add a little bit more yellow up here to my sky, now that I know, before I wasn't really sure which section was going to be the sky and which section was going to be the water. So I wanted to brighten the sky up a little bit with some more yellow, kind of making it more of a nice, beautiful sunset. Now it's time to add some big nice stones in the water. So I'm taking my number 12 brush here, dipping into the black, making sure there's a nice amount of paint on there, and going in, doing a straight line, and then doing a dome shape right over the top of that line and filling in with black paint. If you're new to doing this and you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to mess it up, you could always draw it in with a pencil and then fill it in with your paintbrush. That's one way to do it too, but they're really fun and easy to make. So you just do a straight line, then a little dome shape over the top, and fill it in. So I'm just going to keep adding these, and then once they're dry, we'll do some white and give it some nice highlights. Now we're going to go in and make some little trees. I'm going to be using my mini fan brush here. I'm going to dip into the black. You want to make sure your paintbrush is really full of paint. So I like to dip it in a couple times, brush it on my wax paper, make sure it's nice and full of paint. And then you're just going to be taking the tip of the paintbrush and kind of just dabbing it on. And you're going to make some little trees. Super simple and easy, and you just want to make them, going from tall to pretty short. Here I'm just kind of marking with the corner of my brush. Okay, here's where I want some trees, and then I'm going to go back in, add a little bit more pressure with my brush, and actually turn them into trees. So the harder you push, the bigger they'll become. And you see I'm just holding my brush kind of straight up and down, just pushing down there with the tip of the fan brush. And there you have some trees. Pretty easy, right? And then you're going to go in and do the same thing on the water line, starting from your smallest tree, going up bigger in size until you have it all filled in. I was trying to add some branches with my fan brush here with the very corner of it, but the space was so small I wasn't able to do it successfully, so I had to go in with my flat brush and just add some limbs and branches to these taller trees. And then I also kind of extended the trunk on a few of them, kind of making it go straight up into the sky there, just like that. And then you can go back in with your fan brush and kind of embellish them a little bit, make them a little bit fuller. Now we're going to go in and do some highlights on the water. I'm going to be using my white Artist Law Flow acrylic, and you don't have to use flow acrylic, you can use just regular acrylic, but the flow acrylic was all I had. So I'm just dipping in with your flat brush into the white and going straight across, making those highlight lines. You want to keep these pretty straight. You don't want them to be bent or curved at all, because then that'll end up looking kind of funky. So you want to keep these lines as straight as possible. Now I'm going to add some highlights to the rocks here, and I waited, until I had almost all my highlights in the water. I didn't have much paint on my brush at all. You don't need a lot of paint on your brush to do this. The highlighting on the stones, it just takes a tiny bit of paint. So you want to do this after you've used quite a bit of the white that's already on your brush. And you just go in. I decided to do it on the right side here, And so if you start it on the right side, you want to make sure you highlight all of the stones on the right side. Just add a little bit of white, take your finger and blend it out. Super simple and easy, and that'll make them look nice in 3D, give them a nice little highlight. If you do need to get more paint, I would just kind of paint a lot of it off onto your wax paper or your newspaper, whatever you're working on. Then that way you don't have too much white on there. Because if you have too much white, the stone will turn pure white. Then just go in and take the leftover paint that's on your brush and add a little bit more highlights to the water. I was waiting to do the mountain and the trees because you don't want a ton of white paint on your brush when you do the highlights in that section. The good thing though is if you do add too many highlights into the reflection of the trees or the mountain, you can always go over it with black paint and just repaint it. But I just wanted to make sure there was a tiny bit of paint on my brush, not too much paint, so it wasn't looking super white in those sections. Now we are ready to go in and add our sun or our moon, whichever one you want to call it. I didn't really have a round stencil, so I just used my electrical tape here. Just go ahead and draw it in with the pencil. Then you're going to dip the corner of your number 8 brush into some yellow and then the rest into some white and just outline that and fill it in. I decided that this was going to be more of a moon, so after I get this outlined, I'm going to go in with some more white and just make sure that I paint that pretty white just to make it look more like a moon. And it's okay if you go into the mountain a little bit. Like I said, you can always take some black paint and fill that in. No worries if you accidentally go over the line there. Now while the paint is still wet, I'm going to go in with some of my Res Expressions Glitz and Glam pigment in Milky Way and add a little bit to my moon and then sprinkle some over the water. That's going to give it a nice sparkle. And now I'm going to add some stars. So I'm just taking some Deco Art Americana Snow Titanium White and an old toothbrush, dipping it in my white here and then flicking it onto my piece. Kind of just making some stars up in the sky, or you could call it snow if you accidentally get some into the water like I did. It could be snow, first snow, or stars. And I got a little bit too much white on there, as you could see that big old star. So I'm going to take a little stylus here. I got these off Amazon. I'll link them down below if you want to check them out. These are really handy for painting. You can do a lot of fun stuff with them. And I'm just going to add some bigger stars here. Just dip in and add some bigger stars in some of the sections. And that big huge star you can see there, I'm going to cover that up with some yellow and then do a little star on top of that. Here is how it's looking so far, really pretty. I am going to tape the back with some duct tape and then we will be ready to give it a resin top coat after the paint is all dry. So for my resin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of this Sun Catcher Glitz and Glam pigment just to give it a little bit more of a sparkle. I mixed my resin up off camera and I was already working on some other resin projects. You can see here on my table. So I just added a little bit of that Sun Catcher to my clear resin. And if you want to see a video on how to mix your resin, I will link that down below. Be sure to check that out. It's really simple and easy to do. I had about 2.5 ounces of resin here for this river rock. So all you do is just pour your resin on and then smooth it out with your gloved hand. Really simple and easy. Making sure that it's all nice and covered. And I taped the back with duct tape because resin will not stick to duct tape. So you might have a little bit of light sanding to do on the back side. No big deal. Once you pull the tape, there might be a little bit of a lip there. And then just go in with your heat gun or your torch to pop any bubbles, smooth it out again, add some heat one more time and let it dry, and I will show you what it looks like in 24 hours after it's all dry. And here it is. Check it out. It's all nice and shimmery from that sun catcher powder. Turned out really nice and pretty. And it's a pretty easy painting to do. I know this video was a little bit longer than my usual videos, but yeah, it was so much fun to do this one. I hope you guys give it a try, and I hope you guys like this video. If you did, go ahead and leave me a like, and if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. I hope you guys are all doing good and you're having a great day, and I will see you guys on Friday for another video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.